Jim Joyce. We are consistently consistent now. I
We
love it.
are, we are. I love it. Where do we find you, Eugene?
So I'm in a little cube in the windy city of Chicago. It's a bit windy today. But I think I mentioned last week I was heading to the Accenture Health Tech Challenge. So it started yesterday. It was a great AI talk. Just fascinating, right? I know you're in the midst of it all with
Yep.
clear IP, but it's fascinating how much of stuff that can be actually automated with agents and then today a bunch of startups are pitching a lot of AI solutions and I'm schmoozing and meeting a bunch of people. So again, shout out to Brian Callis for the invite and yeah, that's it. That's
Excellent.
where I'm at. And you?
Yeah, no, like listen, I'm more of the same. I wanted to share actually today. I was getting a smoothie earlier today, and the guy that was making the smoothie for me told me the origination of the word the shot, a shot. Do you know
Okay.
this?
No, this is
So
amazing.
in the so in the
144 episodes in, we finally get to know this.
exactly the smoothie guy, and he was dying to tell someone, so it was perfect. So and I told him I would share it on the podcast. So the origination of the expression "a shot" is when a cowboy in the old west would walk into a saloon and order his whiskey. A lot of times they didn't have any money, and they would pay for it with a bullet.
Oh,
Hence, a shot. So welcome to the shot of digital health this week with
oh,
Eugene
and
Borkovich and Jim
look at
Jones.
look at that. Oh yeah, we forgot to do that. That's amazing. That's a good history lesson. 144 episodes in. Um, I was gonna say we should ask our guest this little puzzle, but I don't think most
Sure.
people know this. This isn't insane. But on that note, I let's invite our guest in. I'm excited to have Samir Batra join us today. Samir and
Excellent.
I think actually the first time we met was the ATA face to face, but we've been connected for ages. Welcome, Samir.
Thanks for having me, guys.
Pleasure.
Hey,
Well,
Samir.
Hey, good to meet you.
yeah,
Great
you
to meet you.
but we're all friends, pushing in the same health tech space and changing the world one person at a time. And you're one of those people. And so I would love for the millions of listeners and viewers take us through your life history. And we got time.
Okay. I always tell people when I meet people, I'm like, do you want the short version or the long version? Because the main
Yeah.
The
question
long
Eugene I
one.
get always is, where are you from? And I'm like, oh shit. I'm like, well, I look at the person and I go, are you worth me telling you the long version or the short version, right?
When
Because
I
depending on the environment, you're like, oh, I'm just from here, and then you're like, let me go off and do what I need to do.
when I
But
say that, Samir, when I say
yeah.
that to my wife, she says there's only one version of you and it's short. So that's the only thing that she says. So, so on
Yeah,
that note.
that's true. That's true. I get it. But so very sort of different, unique story. So, uh, sort of a quick punchline is I lived on four continents by the time I was 18. So, I am a product of my late father, Om Shanti, who passed away last year. He was a diplomat and worked for the foreign services for India. So, so I was born in Prague back when it was Czechoslovakia, then Czech Republic, and now Czechia. And I'm like, I can't keep up with the names. So, so anyways, I was born in Prague. I lived in Vienna after that. So my first three languages that I learned were German, English, and Hindi. Um, I basically have lost my German, but supposedly they tell me it's somewhere back here, like,
Yeah,
somewhere.
you just gotta activate it. It's like the right trigger, right?
Exactly, exactly.
What?
So maybe when I'm gonna be in Germany, in Austria this summer, I mean this end of September, October, maybe it'll just like randomly come back and I'll be like
Yeah.
this brown guy walking around talking, speaking in German. So
But so does that do you have not to get way too personal, but do you have European citizenship if you were born there? Were
no, so the strange thing with I think with, obviously it became EU, and, Czechia is part of the EU and stuff. But I've heard, at least my understanding, every country has their own still, way to sort of give you citizenship. So in Czechia, last time I checked, which was years ago, you have to have like language proficiency. And I was like, I don't speak Czech. So I have the years you've lived there, like you're born
Yeah.
there.
All the other
And I was like, yeah, I guess one day when to Eugene, to your point, when we stop like saving the world in healthcare, maybe one day, I would be like, I'm gonna go learn Czech and like become a Czech citizen. I don't know. So yeah, no, I don't, unfortunately. So anyway, Prague and then Vienna. So, dad was stationed at the UN, I went to the UN Vienna International School. And then dad was doing fairly well. So for India back in the 80s, there were four very important countries that you had to have relationships with. Okay. It was Russia, it was the UK, it was the US, and last was Pakistan, because they're your fighting neighbor, right? So, and then probably fifth or sixth were like Vienna and like Geneva because of the UN. And then, you had China in that list, like further down back then. Now China's sort of moved up. And so we moved from Vienna, Austria to Islamabad, Pakistan.
Wow.
And so, I went to the American US Embassy School with Marines at guards. We had a guard. We had security patrol take us to school, and then here I am living in like, quote unquote, my enemy country. And so it was just a very interesting way of experiencing life, right? So I experienced life, you could say from 8 to 5 as an American. But then outside of that, I'm like, I don't know, like I have to have my own identity. I'm an Indian, and my dad's a politician. He's a diplomat. So we're here to sort of build relationships and partnerships. And then I'm in this country where, like, should I be afraid to go out and play with the kids? Because guys, this is 80s, right? They ain't no internet, they ain't no iPhone. This is like, come on, you take your bike out and you go out, right? And you just come home whenever you come home. And so, but at the end of the day, it probably gave me an appreciation for what I learned later on in life, but people are just people. All that stuff is bullshit. Like that, lions get drawn, and, people for power fight, right? It's power and women, typically what the wars are about, so, and it's like, but they didn't care. The kids didn't care. And so, and then, the next shock is then dad gets transferred to Washington, D.C. So we're like making these rounds now. So now I'm going from Islamabad, Pakistan to Washington, D.C. And so, there I had a choice, and I actually decided I wanted to go to public school. So I was like, I'm going to go to public school, because I was like, man, I've been to private school with all these bratty kids, right?
You already know English? Just curious.
What's that?
Did you already know English?
Oh yeah, because you remember English, German, and Hindi were the first three.
Yeah, that's right.
So and what was strange was I had an American accent, but people were like, where, from, how? And I was like, well, I've just been to American schools, right? Like that's how I learned my English. So so I got to DC, and I was like, I think I want to go to public school, because I was growing up in a very like sheltered, catered environment, right? It wasn't just other embassy kids. The locals that would go to our kids were like the states of power, fathers running the largest corporation in the country. It was like really kids with silver spoons. Actually, it's funny. Us diplomat kids were like the poor kids. We're like, hey, look, we're here because of our dad's job. Like we're working because of that. So, did we use did you use
we lost Jim, but he'll connect back up since
Okay.
since we don't edit, we're meticulously unproduced.
Awesome. I love it. I love it. So, so yeah, so then DC, and this is again late 80s, early 90s, like turn into the 90s decade. And I have an older brother, so he's, about 6 years older than me. Much smarter than me. I think I'm better looking, but he's a lot smarter. he had, you know, he had
That's what I said to
graduated.
my brother too. So in
What's
case
that? Yeah, exactly. So he had graduated from the high school in Pakistan, and my parents shipped him off to the US and said, "Okay, you go, you know, go to school." Um, he very different upbringing. I mean, we're very similar, but very different as well. He put in brown and Asian families, the older son always gets a lot of pressure put on him. So they were like, you have to do everything, right? Like it's like it's you. And it's like,
paved the way, paved the way.
yeah, you gotta pay the way. So did he pay the way? I mean, this guy graduated from Cornell at 21 with a master's. So like, you know, he graduated high school at 16 and like, you know, just whatever. So I'm like, great, man, thanks. As a younger brother, I'm like, shit, man, this is the guy. Like, come on, like, you know. So like we hated each other. I hated him. I was like, man, what are you doing? Like, can you just like be a kid? Why do you have to go to college at 16? Like, just relax.
He was
Like,
under a lot of
why?
pressure.
What's the rush? Just calm down. Right? Me, I'm like taking my time. You know, I'm like, I want to take my time. So then in the middle of my sophomore year, um, my dad's like, hey, we're moving again. I was like, oh shit, not this again. Because you know, when you were a kid, it was cool, you didn't know. Now you're 16, 17, you're like, dude, I have friends. Like, there's that girl I want to go hit on. Like, come on, you're like cramping my style. He's like, oh, don't worry, you're gonna love where we're going next. And I was like, I don't know. We're going to Buenos Aires, Argentina.
Oh
I was
wow.
like, oh shit, okay. All right. I
That
think I could probably I think I could probably roll with this. I was like,
muy bien, muy bien.
so yeah, so middle sophomore year, it's like we're moving to Argentina.
Yeah.
So we get to Argentina and you know the seasons are swapped. So it's like summer break. Like it was winter in DC and it's like summer in the and again, American schools, you know, so this school in Buenos Aires is a little bit bigger. They actually have like a junior college and it's pretty significant presence. Where I was used to my class sizes being like 30, 40 kids, this was like 100 kids. So it's like, you know, it wasn't like high school, like US high school gym, but like you're getting there, you know, like it wasn't a couple hundred kids, but and so yeah, but this was amazing. Dad at this point is climbing the ranks, and so he's deputy chief of mission. So we get this swanky penthouse overlooking Rio Plata. I have a private entrance to the condo. You know, like the elevator opens up just to your floor. I'm like, this is awesome. They don't know what they just did. So I'm like, okay, yeah, look, I'm brown. I gotta maintain grades, but after that, man, they don't know what the hell's going on, right? So I'm just like, I'm living the Argentine teenage life. I mean, I'm
Amen.
partying my butt off, right? Like I'm just hanging out, doing my thing, and then it's time for school college. And again, no internet, no research. Brown kids, most of us back then, you get two choices. Hey, do you want to be a doctor or do you want to be an engineer? Like, that's it. Like, there's only two options. And I was like, well, yeah, the doctor thing, I don't think I'm going to do that. Okay. So they're like, okay, you're going to go to engineering school. We're going to tell your brother's going to tell you where you're going to go to school. Remember, the brother is in charge because he's in Boston and he's working in the tech scene in the 90s, right? In the mid 90s, the tech scene that was happening about. So they're like, your brother's gonna tell you. And my parents are talking to my brother, and they basically I didn't know this. They told my brother, this kid's been partying his ass off. Like we gotta send him somewhere where he's not gonna party. Okay. And so I got into postal schools, and I've always lived in big cities and like major cosmopolitan cities. So my brother's like, oh, I got a school for him. It's a good school, but oh yeah, it's in the middle of nowhere. I went to Purdue in West Lafayette, Indiana. So now I fly from Buenos Aires,
Right.
Argentina, and I go to West Lafayette, Indiana. And I was like, holy shit, where did I just walk into? Right. My brother meets me at the airport. We're driving, and it's just cornfields, wheat fields, flat as hell.
No, your brother wasn't there. He's like he went to meet you there.
He just
Yeah.
went to make sure that I was gonna be
And
there.
you're catching the landing and you
He's
showed
like,
up.
here's your dorm, here's where you're gonna be.
You
Right.
sound like a
And
troublemaker, Samir.
I
Yeah, it was
mean
kind of.
it wasn't this. It was just, you know, I think I was just I think from an early age, I just kind of maybe didn't want to be put in a box, right? I didn't know this. I was just kind of like, hey, you know. So so he leaves me, he goes off. Now, the one thing that happened to me in high school, which I wish this happens with my kids and other kids growing up, my AP econ teacher in high school made a huge impression on me, right? So I took econ, and I did really well. And I was just, I guess connecting the dots from a business perspective. And he looked at me and he said, Mr. Austin, shout out to Mr. Austin. And he said, listen, why are you studying engineering? You should be studying business. You have a business mind. You think like a business mind. Yeah, you're smart. You got the science, the math, whatever. But he's like, you should study finance or statistics or like something, He's like, try to do both, right? And that's one thing I didn't tell my parents. I contacted Purdue and I said, hey, listen, I'm coming in for engineering. You guys have a really good business school too. I think I'm going to dual degree. And they're like, okay. So even though I'm like, kind of being recluse, at the end of the day, I have a plan, right? So I was like, let me do this. Let me study business too. So they're like, yeah, cool, whatever. Hey, it's going to take you longer than 4 years. I was like, yeah, I'm in no rush, right? So again, opposite of my brother. I'm like, I'm in no rush. It's, we'll figure it out. So I started doing that, but then, reality hit. And what reality hit was, man, I looked at myself and I was like, I'm not an engineer. I'm like, this is just not me. Like, I just can't. And the signal came to me in one of my classes. We had to build a alarm clock.
Yeah, I was going to ask, is it like mechanical engineering?
Yeah, it was double E, right? Double E. So electrical engineering. And we had to build like an alarm clock, like a standard, LED, like the standard, one of those like GE alarm clocks, the little alarm clocks we used to have on the side with the red flashing buttons. And so they're like, you have to design and build this alarm clock. And so I designed and built it, submitted the project, and I got a D. And I was like, what the hell? I'm like, if it works, shouldn't you just get an A? Like it worked, the damn thing works. And I said, and I also said this, and I said, I used 12 less parts. Okay, so I was like, some transformers, transistors. I was like, here, I used 12 less parts. I'm like, mine's more efficient. Mine's more cost effective. And I was like, why the hell did you give me a D? And he goes, because you didn't use these parts. And I was like, what? And he goes, it's working today, but it's going to fail in the future because, it's going to overheat. And I said, well, that wasn't the assignment. Assignment was make this damn thing work. And I'm like, it works. And mine is cheaper. I use less parts. And the click in my brain was, yeah, I can't be this robot that you're going to put into a lab or into some manufacturing area. And, in Purdue.
Yeah, you need space to be able to
I need
build
space to
unstable alarm clocks.
Unstable alarm clocks. Gotta go after them. It might burn out. I was already thinking like a startup. Gonna have to pivot at some point, right? But my point was, I followed the instructions, right? I followed the directions, and I just couldn't understand that. I was like, that your explanation is bullshit. Like you should have told me this before. You didn't give me the parameters properly. And so I decided to like drop engineering, right? 2.5 years in, and I was deathly afraid of my parents because, oh, you don't do that shit to Indian parents. And I was like, oh my God.
For the record, I'm slightly scared of them. I'm slightly scared of them as well. I haven't met them yet, but I'm slightly scared of them.
And my dad at this point, they've moved on. My dad is deputy chief of mission for the Indian embassy in Rome, Italy. Okay, so I'm like, dude, he's like way far away. He can't beat my ass. Like he's too far. So I waited 6 months. I transferred. I did everything. And then I called him and I said, hey, I got to tell you something. I can't do this engineering. I'm like crying on the phone. I can't do engineering. I can't do this. I'm like, I'm doing business and finance and my grades were awesome last semester. And my dad goes, yeah, I don't give a shit. You're 18. It's your life. Man, it's your life. I don't care.
That was a pivot. Talk about a pivot, right?
Yeah, he was like, my job is to get you to college, and he's like, this is your life. You wanna become whatever you want to do. You're in charge now.
What do they say to an embassy official as they move them from Pakistan to Rome? They say you're going from water to wine. That's an
exactly right. So I mean, I was just like,
you're on fire today.
Okay. And I'm sitting there and I was like, oh shit, man, I could have done this a while ago. So anyways, long story short, got out of school and, for me, the one common thing, and I'll sort of talk about this, Eugene, and you're over your email and stuff. Nothing has come easy. And again, I'm not sitting there like people have other tragedies and other hardships and all that sort of stuff, right? I'm just sort of compartmentalizing into my sort of situation. Nothing has ever come easy. I've had to do it the hard way. I've had to struggle for it. I've had to learn. I've had to fail. Then I've had to succeed, and then fail. And so you don't know this at that age, right? You're just sort of, you don't have a chance. You cry like crazy and you roll with it. And so I graduate college in late 2000, right? I took 5.5 years. I think Purdue was also like, dude, we're done. Like, can you leave now? And I was like, I couldn't wait to leave. So my last internship. So I had an internship between like before my last 6 months of school were over, because I was a December grad. And I applied for a full-time position at MCI WorldCom as an analyst. I was like, you know what? Everybody else is getting these internships and they're making like, back then it was like 10, $15 an hour. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to apply for a full-time job. I just want to see, can I get it? Right. And I got it. Right. So I got the job. And then I broke it to them and I said, hey, by the way, I got to go back and finish my last semester after 3 months. And they're like, oh, okay, yeah, no problem. Like, and I was like, oh shit, I was sweating for no reason. But I was making like 25, $30 an hour, like as a 21, 22-year-old. And I was like, yeah, this is great. And this is before the, WorldCom collapse. This is,
I was going to say
2000.
MCI WorldCom. Like, I haven't heard.
Yeah.
This in a while.
This is 2000, before the boom, right?
Quarter of a century ago.
Yeah.
You're aging yourself, Samir.
Yeah. Oh yeah. No issues. So I'm like, okay, I go to DC, and like this is like when telecom in DC was like flying high, right? You had UUNet, you had Sprint, you had Nextel, you had WorldCom, all these companies that don't exist, right? They're all like rolled into Verizon, I think, bought like most of these businesses. And so I did that, and I came back, and then I graduated, and I had like, good offers out of school, and I took a job. This is completely not me either. I took a job with International Paper. Dow 30, like, what do they make? They make paper. One of the most boring but stable businesses in the world. Paper. I don't care about all the AI in the world. We still need paper. Okay.
Like
and my job
office,
was
from the
and
office.
it's Memphis, Tennessee. Okay. Again, why am I doing this to myself? I don't know. But the job that I had fit me so perfectly. They were like, hey, we're going to put you in this group of 20 people, and you're going to go across the world. You're going to be a part of our worldwide SAP deployment team. And I was like, this is awesome. They're like 6 months in Europe, 6 months in Asia, 6 months. I was like, yeah, let's do this. They're like, you have to have a residence in Memphis. And I was like, I'll never be there. Don't worry.
If they're still living around, and if they're running SAP, they didn't hit the Microsoft bug, right?
Exactly.
We were actually flying German airline, and we're like, okay, they're not, because they're running SAP versus Microsoft.
Yes, exactly.
Side note, but
yeah,
but I am sitting on the edge, curious on how you actually made it to healthcare, right? Because
it's right around this corner. I'm sorry. I get carried. It's my dad's fault.
Oh, we like it.
Storytelling.
Listen,
But you know what?
We'd love to do the Tim Ferriss style. 2.5, 3 hours.
No. I'm done. It's around the corner. So basically, what happened is, I'm taking this job, right? I go to Boston to hang out for a couple of months, because they're like, hey, we got time. You're a December grad. We don't start till the spring. I'm like, okay. So I go to Boston. I meet my brother's buddies from HBS. They've started companies, and they're like, hey, you should come work for us. And like, so I literally decided to go work for a startup. Okay. Not in healthcare. Called my boss, International Paper, and I said, yeah, I'm not doing this. And he's like, yeah, I get it. Okay. I understand. I'm working at this company. .com collapse happens. 6 months out of college. I have no job. And remember, I'm an international student, so I have 12 months to get a job. It's called optional practical training. Okay, my clock is 6 months over. I haven't done anything. So I'm applying for jobs everywhere. And my first job, my real first job, was with the advisory board company. People are like, how the hell did you get a job there? By hook or crook. I literally applied to every newspaper ad. And then you know what I did? Instead of sending a cover letter, I sent a redacted analyst report that I was creating when I was an analyst at MCI WorldCom. So my cover letter was a 40-page analysis report. So stuff that kids do now, like case studies, I was like, you know what? Screw this shit. How do I stand out? A cover letter is so damn boring. They need to see work product. Let me send them an analyst report redacted. And at the advisory board, I did that, and I emailed Frank Williams and all the CEO, all the executives in one night. And then HR calls me the next morning and said, we've heard that you're batshit crazy, and we need to interview you just because of you did something that nobody does. Like, you called and emailed everybody, and you sent everybody 50-page analyst reports. I was like, I'm desperate. I'm about to get my ass kicked out of the country. I need a job, right? So long story short, I ended up getting a job at the advisory board. My original interview date was September 13th, 2001, 2 days after 9/11. I had a ticket to fly from Austin, Texas to Reagan National on 9/11 on a one-way ticket, and my name is Samir. One of the terrorist middle names were Samir. So, I got to DC. I don't know how I got to DC, and I never left. Let's just put it that way. So, advisory board, why advisory board? Dude, I didn't know crap about healthcare. I needed a job. Okay. I just wanted to get off my brother's couch. That's what I wanted. My parents were not in the country.
Yeah.
And so I was like, this is it. And I basically was assigned, it's true, to be, the Excel lackey for the company. There was like a couple of Excel guys, and they're like, hey, brown guy who knows my numbers, you're going to sit in the corner here and you're going to just crank out like pivot tables and regression graphs and reports and stuff like that. And I was assigned to, Frank Williams and Tom Peterson. So these guys ended up, they built advisory board, and they went and did Evolent Health, as you guys will know.
Yeah.
Right? So they founded Evolent Health. So I'm like, okay, I don't know shit about healthcare, but my first job was to be an analyst and help build out their consulting product. And I joined the company 2 months before they went public. So I'm like, hey, great. I don't know what this means. Like, I can't buy a lot of shares at $30,000 annual salary living in DC. Yeah, it wasn't a lot of money back then. Even for then, it was not a lot of money. But what I did was I wanted to learn.
You got some options at least, even though
I got some options. And you know what,
Okay.
stupidly, you know what I did do? I bought employee stock options. I maxed it out. I didn't invest $1, Eugene, into my 401k. I believed in the company so much because I felt like they gave me a chance. I was like, who the hell am I? And I just kept on buying company stock. And my friends are like, hey, why are you not investing in your 401k? And I was like, yeah, I think the stock's going to do 10 times better. And they're like, how? And I'm like, I don't know. I'm helping it. I didn't know. I didn't think past that. And so I learned like what it was. My first job was new product development. And then literally as I built these products out, right? And the product was advisory board, for those who don't know, they're a research organization, right? They produce clinical evidence, best practice research for providers, clinicians, administrators to use. And so once I helped build the product line, which was to go actually implement the research. So hospitals were coming to us and saying, hey, your research is awesome. The book looks amazing on the back, but like, can you help me put it into practice? Like change management, stuff we talk about now. Like, you can have the best tech in the world, but you don't know how to implement it. It don't matter. So they're like, hey, help us actually implement it. And we said, okay. And then I moved into what we call delivery. And so I spent my first 5+ years traveling the country, working with providers of all shapes and sizes, from academic, rural, nonprofit, for-profit, you name it. I went to, I think, 47 states out of 50.
Wow.
And every little nook and cranny, like little small hospital in some little town in Arkansas to like NYU, right, in New York City, and everything in between. And the other thing that I did was, instead of picking a lane, right, talking about picking a lane, Eugene, right, and Jim, like, you become like a revenue cycle person, or, you're a clinician, you become a cardiologist, you have to specialize. Everybody specializes in their training, even lawyers and everything. I said, no, again, I never wanted to go the straight line. I wanted to zig and zag. And I was like, you know what? I was giving up promotions, right? But I was like, I'm going to keep jumping groups. So I did everything from cost reduction to clinical throughput to bed management to ER management. I didn't care. I was like, feed me.
I mean, do you think it kind of drives into your curiosity DNA?
100%. I can't sit still.
That's
I just can't.
That's clear. That's clear.
It's clear, right? Like, I just can't sit still. The funny thing is, I actually do not have ADHD. I've been tested multiple times. I'm actually very focused when I pick what I want to focus on. But I'm curious.
You get bored with it. You're like, all right, boom. Next.
Yeah, and it's partly, look, my dad's my upbringing, but also my dad taught me two things at this point that I took and I've taken to heart today, and I practice it today. He said, number one, learn how to communicate. Just communicate, like public speaking, communicate, be a storyteller. Okay. And because he was a diplomat, I learned. Like I remember being 8 years old, and they would make us do speeches at like India Day and stuff, and I'm like, what the hell am I doing? Right? I didn't
Samir,
appreciate it back then.
you said the word storyteller, and I want to touch because you're also a fellow podcaster. I know,
Yeah,
I met Arundhati at the Met City News actually in Chicago a couple of years back,
yeah,
right? And I saw you guys launched a podcast together, so maybe just
yeah,
give our listeners, let's cross promote a little bit here.
yeah,
What you guys are talking about, and
yeah.
why they should tune into you guys as well.
Yeah, no, for sure. So yeah, they reached out to me. I went to Med City's conference last year as well, and and then I think in the fall they reached out to me. I don't know. I think through um a few people that we have in common. I mean, like they're in the
Amazon
business.
Johnson also, by
Somebody
the
will,
way.
yeah.
That's where
So
you and I think met at the ATA, right? A couple of years
yeah,
back.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So they reached out to me and they said, "Hey, listen, we're looking for somebody who's outspoken." And I was like, "The hell are you calling me for?" No, okay, no. And they're like, "Well, we want somebody who's outspoken, but like can back up their shit and is not afraid to talk about certain topics." And I said, "Okay." And so I don't know if it was this comment or some other comment. You know, Look, we make the circuits at all these conferences, right? And I totally respect all the people that are doing all this work. I mean, this is like, a lot of us don't get paid to do this stuff. We just go there. We're trying to move the industry forward, right? But at the end of the day, still, like, I'm gonna have a still. I kind of was tired of like, quote unquote, these amazing you know, celebrities in our space that get put up on stage, and a lot of times all they're doing is there's this level of self-promotion, which I get, but they're just reiterating the same problem. Yeah, healthcare is broken. No shit. It costs too much. No shit. And I'm just sitting there going, what am I learning? What am I taking away from you? All I hear is the same shit, and it's just the same people repeating it, right?
Samir, real quick, I don't know how much you know about the shout of digital health therapy, but Jim
Yeah.
and I, before we actually started the podcast, we always said that the stuff that happens on stage is bullshit. It's
Yeah.
the stuff that happens, the conversations at the bar. And so the idea
Yes.
was to get people like yourself on
I
the
love
show,
it.
digital
I
health
love
therapy,
it.
and talk the
Yeah.
real deal. Now, listen, everybody has some kind of logo attached to it, and everybody needs to,
Yeah.
Right.
but I think the idea here is to get to know those individuals. And with that, I'm going to actually transition you. And so shout out to Arundhati and,
Yeah.
tune in. We'll link to it. But I do want to get to, I saw your
Let's
post the other
get
day.
hip.
And,
Yeah.
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 And the hipsters and the community. So maybe just back up a little bit. Tell us a
Yeah.
little bit of the story there. I know we sort of started chatting, and
Yeah. Yeah.
I'll reference your post on our LinkedIn post as well.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I appreciate that. And I think, absolutely right on your comment, like what you said. So, just to kind of finish that up. Yeah. Like, so basically they wanted somebody outspoken. And so, we talk about things that a lot of people don't want to go talk about.
Yep.
You know what I mean? So just kind of like with you guys, that's why, I've been watching. So actually in preparation, I watched a bunch of your episodes and I love the style. I love the fact that you guys have that banter and you're sort of taking people behind the scenes, right? And so same thing for me for my story with hip, like, look, I'm not going to reorient people to the post, but basically my thesis behind hip was, um, I just looked at the stats of investing. I looked at what was happening in the venture space, and I tried to fit in, right? I tried to go get a job in that space. So, after the advisory board, I spent 14 years as an entrepreneur, right? Either co-founding or like help building these companies early stage. And, I had all the successes and failures that you have. But typically for an entrepreneur, there's three types of exits that you potentially, hopefully might see one day. You might sell to another company, private equity or some private capital might come buy you out, or you might do an IPO or public thing. And I was fortunate enough to experience all three types, right? So
check.
exactly, right? So check, check, check. And I was like, yeah, unfortunately the checks were not big enough where I can just, retire and just do nonprofit work because that's what I would do if I had all the money in the world. But, the more that time I kept on spending with founders and entrepreneurs, right? People like you guys, we're cut from a different cloth. We just are, right? Like it's just, we take on risk differently. We have different expectations, but man, you don't have to ever worry about motivation with entrepreneurs. Like I'm sorry, you just
Sure.
don't. Mostly you don't, right? The drive is so there. And so then I looked at the investing world and things just did not match up to me. Because traditionally, when I looked at venture, right, traditional venture capitalists, you take any firm, 70-80% of these guys, so I'm talking about healthcare only, right? 70-80% of these
Sure.
guys, here's the list. They've never studied healthcare. They don't have a healthcare background. Okay, good, fine. I don't either. Okay. They've never worked in healthcare. Okay, fine. They've never been operators or entrepreneurs. Okay. And then they've never actually worked in a company. I'm sorry, working in an investment bank or private equity, that ain't a company. You're not making a product. You're not selling a, sorry. So you have all these things, right? And then, but what you do have is you worked in private equity, you have an MBA from a top 5 school and all this stuff. And somebody decided to make you a venture capitalist. A venture capitalist job is to promote dreams, is to fulfill dreams of passionate individuals that are trying to make change in the world in healthcare. But you don't understand shit about the industry. You're going to make every investment based on finances, potential, and the most shittiest of them all, FOMO. Congratulations. That's how Theranos happens. Right. And that's why your track record in venture is shit. Right. You invest in hundreds of companies and you're looking for that one. And all the other ones are going to get shit on. You're giving them false hope. Here's money. Oh man, I love you.
I love the Ben.
You love
Ben
me. You just want that one guy to succeed, and I'm going to be your failure and you're fun. So honestly,
Samir, I love isn't it Ben Horowitz who has the policy? Like he has the policy around that if one of the venture guys in his firm, if they show up late, like one of the partners shows up late to a meeting, he charges them because he says he doesn't want to waste the entrepreneur's time. And he talks about, I think in his post, he talks about being, we're dream makers here. So
yeah. So I truly believe that, right? So so that was what I walked into, Eugene. And so I tried to, and so somebody famously said, well, you want to change the system, you got to be part of the system. Okay, awesome, got it. So I approached VCs and I said, hey guys, I want to work in this industry. I want to do this, and what I'd been doing in the meantime after my last startup was I was partnering with venture to manage their portfolio companies, because this is another bullshit statement they all make. Oh, I'm going to help you post-investment. How are you going to help me? You don't know the industry, bro. You have no connections. You have no relationship. What the hell are you going to do? You're going to yell at me every quarter because my finances are not right? Hey, why is your ARR not improving? Why is your burn rate down?
Hey,
be productive.
I think we can get probably again hours on this, but I think the board composition, who invests, right? At the end of the day, it's not just, even in this market, it's not about just capital. It's about having the
100%
right around you that can help open the doors, that can help you on the ground, right? Ex-operators that can roll up the sleeves and solve shit with you. And to your point, not far from every investor are like that, right?
You just defined what I did for HIP, right? So basically, HIP's thesis was exactly that. I said, listen, guys, investing, growing a company, doing full life cycle management of a business requires a village, not an individual. And so I said, look, I took a page out of healthcare delivery. What do we talk about in healthcare delivery, which we don't necessarily practice all the time? I understand there's constraints, regulatory reimbursement, but the thesis is that healthcare delivery should be multidisciplinary and a team-based approach to care. And I said, you know what? I'm going to take that same lingo and apply it to investing. So HIP is literally built up of non-institutional investors and institutional investors who have healthcare in common, but they're all different, but they're rowing in the same direction. So we have clinicians, product guys, operators, VCs, health systems, device companies. I don't care, right? Come together to do this together.
What does HIPS actually stand for, by the way?
So it's funny because when I started off, I was like, I need companies to come and like present to me. So it's Health Innovation Pitch is what it stands for. And HIP stands for that. And then, the P has become like, oh, it's product, it's platform, it's partners, whatever the hell it is. But it's promoting health innovation in a much more multidisciplinary approach. And so the VC piece of behind it, Eugene, honestly, I truly is what I tagged there. I just figured that shit out while I was building the damn plane and flying it. I didn't know I was building a VC.
But let me
I
ask
did
you a
not.
question though, because I
Uh-huh.
think when we met, even, you did, almost like an angel network, right?
Yeah.
You pulled together SPVs, et
Yeah.
cetera. And this is where, I don't want this to be like, Samir, you are amazing, but I want to challenge you a little bit because there's a lot of
Mhm.
angel networks out there.
Yep.
And one would argue that most VCs have a combination. Maybe it's flipped a bit, right? It's
Mhm.
90 institutional, 10%,
Yeah.
just family offices, wealth individuals. And it's always difficult to get to those individuals, right?
Yeah.
If you're a startup, a portfolio company that need
Yeah.
help, right? Because they're so.
Yeah.
Is that your
Sure.
differentiator? Is that where the access is to some of the
Yeah.
operator builders? Like, I'm not trying to put words into your mouth, but I'm
No,
asking.
no, no. I love
Yeah.
it. No, it's I get that asked that quite a bit. And honestly, I would not be true to my core if I told you that I felt like there was only one differentiator, right? So the one thing that is different is, yes, look, I started off honestly, I'm just trying to go where the puck is going towards, right? So I started off, and even day one, Eugene, my goal was never to build an angel network. I was like, no, it wasn't just about, physicians and, individuals. I brought in VCs and institutionals day one. That's when people were telling me this is never going to work. Like, how are you doing this? Individuals are never going to sit with VCs, and VCs have egos. They're not going to sit with individuals. But I found those people who sat there and said, yeah, I don't give a crap. I believe in what you're trying to do, and I want to be part of this, hypothesis, if you want to call it. Right. So that was number one.
Right,
Right. Number one was
I'm gonna
that.
interject because something you
Yeah.
said in the very beginning, as you travel from country to country, you kind of said, well, at the human level, we're all humans, right? So I don't know, part of me, I'm not putting words into your mouth again, but it's like applying that journey to
Right.
this investment thesis, right?
It truly was. You're right. See, that's what I'm saying. I'm reflecting now, and I'll be honest with you. A lot of this stuff is reflection also has happened after my father passed. And you think about the lessons that you taught, you were learned, and all these things, and they sort of crystallize for you much clearer. Right. And so for me, these were some of the points. But to your point, that's one differentiator. Hey, how many angel networks do you know that have like VC sitting in the room? How many of them do you know that have 18 health system executives sitting in the room with you? Not many. Right. So that's number one. Number two, to your point, I did not want to do dumb capital. I wanted to be smart capital. So on average, 10 to 15 of our investors, we turn them into advisors post investment. And by the way, this is an agreement that the startup signs with us, and we draw up an SOW. So it's not like bullshit like, yeah, we're going to help you. No, I'm going to put pen to paper.
Yep.
And so some of those investors who are investing in the deal, they're turning around and being like, yeah, I'm also joining the company as a medical advisor. We're building a medical advisory. So you see all these concepts out there. By the way, Neil's awesome at Redesign Health, right? He's part of HIP from early days, right? And so I took pages out of like accelerators, redesign, and I said, I'm going to gobble all this stuff up and put it into one model. So we do truly call ourselves full life cycle support of an entrepreneur. Like, for example, I'll give you one shocking differentiator that we do that all my entrepreneurs say to me. They come to us, they present. We still are stuck to our meeting model. We do 24 meetings a year, but it's trying to get a meeting with us is very, very difficult because when you come into one of our meetings, you're facing 50 different investors. That's 50 different decision makers. We synthesize all the data. We do what we call evidence-based collaborative diligence. I came up with the term, I built it. We built a backend platform that houses the data.
Evidence-based collaborative diligence. Is that right?
Yes. And what is evidence-based in the beginning stages? Guess what? These companies are so damn young. There's not reams of data. The evidence is all these people's intelligence put together. That's evidence. That is actual evidence, right? Like they're sitting there saying this. So here's the thing. They meet with us, right? After this work. Guess what? Get one of the biggest complaints that entrepreneurs have for investors. Dude, I don't know where I stand. I get no feedback. I get shit like, we'll get back to you. You're too young. You're too early. I send every single company that comes and presents to us a 7-page diligence report.
Like the 40-page analyst report that you
Yeah.
sent with the
Exactly.
interview.
Exactly. Qualitative and quantitative feedback, including an answer to the question that says, are you investment worthy? Do I want to continue the conversation? Yes, no, maybe. So there's 7 other questions that are basically scored. Product market fit, go to market. What do we think about you? Your tech differentiator, your competitive
And
advantage.
how many deals, how many companies are you looking at? If you're doing 24 meetings, are you doing 3 to 4 per meeting?
Yeah, so basically I'll give you like sort of lifetime stats. Okay. So we've had about 4,000 companies in our pipeline. Okay. And we've only taken serious audience with about 225, and we've invested in 9. But out of those 9 companies, 7 of them have gotten multiple rounds of funding from us, and 3 of them have actually gotten 3 rounds of funding from us. But here's where the model is amazing, is that we have institutional investors that are HIP members on every single company's cap table through the HIP experience. So the institutions have no requirement to invest with us, but guess what? I've got health systems investing with me. I've got other VCs investing with me. The idea is, guys, stop syndicating investments. At the 11th hour, you're going to call your buddies and say, hey, man, I've been doing diligence on this. Come jump on the deal with me. Trust me, because I'm who I am. No, we start sharing everything during discovery, during diligence, and then guess what? We do shared decision making. Oh, shit, another term that's heavily used in care delivery. Right? I'm basically applying the crap that we do in healthcare and saying, well, apply it to investing. What's so novel about this? It's very simple.
And how early are these companies?
Seed to Series A is sort of our first check thesis.
Okay.
Right. And so, but then we'll keep investing. And now what's interesting is we've become, I keep pivoting my lingo. We've now become opportunistic investors. Why? Because I have companies at Series B or C coming to me and saying, I want access to this network. Dude, you're in bed with 18, 20 hospitals. You've got payers. You could just, because one of the focuses that we do have, 3 focus areas that we have post-investment. We use this during diligence. We use this during decision-making, and we use it post-investment. Clinical and scientific validation and promotion and growth. Go-to-market, business model growth and expansion. And third, product and technology growth and expansion. We do that through the lens of discovery, through diligence, through decision-making, and post-health. So we're driving commercial growth. I'm like, wait, why would I not introduce you to a health system that makes sense for you? Yeah, it does. So they're going to go ahead and invest in you, and they're going to go give you revenue.
Samir, before we jump to Jim's kind of famous question, because I'm fast forward, I do want to touch on the importance of community, and I love your term hipsters.
Yeah, it was just too easy. HIP investor. I'm like, let's just shorten it.
Hipster, but I do believe, I think I've been a huge proponent of communities from Health 2.0 to Health Excel to, and I think the way you sort of design this model, in my opinion, a strong anchor and part of that DNA is the community that you build. So maybe like literally a minute or 2 before we jump to Jim's question.
100%. And, shout out to, hipsters. So every hipster gets their hip pin. Okay. But yeah, no, honestly, look, I've learned from you guys, honestly, like Pink Socks, right? You, Matthew Holt, right? Like, listen, I've been attending these things. I've been following, I've been learning. And that point that I made you, like, there's 2 things Dad taught me. One was learn to public speak. Guess what the second thing was? He's a diplomat. Learn to network.
Yeah.
Relationships are the key. Build networks, build relationships, right? So from day one, I did that. So when it was time for me to build a network like HIP, Eugene, I literally called people that have known me for 25 years. I tell people one thing about when I become close friends with them, I say, look, I'm like a venereal disease. Once you get me, there's no cure. It's unfortunate. I'm like that. I'm like AIDS. I'm like a STD you can't get rid of. Like, it's unfortunate. I love hard. I friend even harder.
Twist.
Jim, welcome to the venereal disease club.
Yeah, exactly. So I love hard. I friend even harder. So it was not, so the community, Eugene, you nailed it. That was the #1 thing I focused on. I said, look, everything else, we'll figure it shit out. Listen, what? Like, I can go learn how to do a cap table and an SPV and IR, like all that shit's up. It's called AI. I can Investopedia that. I can Wikipedia. I can learn all that shit. You can't learn how to network. You gotta build it and foster it at a young age, and you get better over time, right?
Yeah.
So community was the number one focus. I said, I'm gonna bring these people together. Oh, it's never been done before. It won't happen. They won't talk to each other. Shit, whatever. I don't care. You know, when you were a kid and your parents threw you into the sandbox and you knew no other kids, guess what you had to do? You had to learn to like talk to people, and you blah blah blah. You're babbling, but you had to do it. So I was like, you know what? We're gonna do this. We're gonna do everything that people have said can't. Don't say can't to me. I will figure out a way. I don't care about the business model. Listen, I'm still broke. I'm running a venture firm. I'm still broke. You know, most people don't know this, but my first fund, I have 0% management fees. I have no annual fee. So I'm taking all the risk. I'm eating all the cost. You know what? I'll figure it out. I don't care. This is the right thing to do.
Awesome.
Awesome.
Jim, let's go, man.
I'm
Let's go.
scared.
No, listen, this is like, I usually have to kind of pepper people to get details out of them, but I didn't have to pepper you. So, okay. So anyway, so kind of walk with me now.
Okay.
And, you know, we're going to go into the future and back into the past. So you're flying your jet that you've built yourself with 60% of the parts required to build a normal jet. So you're flying your jet to your commencement speech at Purdue in India, and your brother at this stage has retired, and he's now an Uber driver in the area, locally in the area, and he picks you up at the airport, and he's bringing you into Purdue, but before the Purdue, there's going to be a conference for young entrepreneurs that are in Purdue, and they've asked you to come in and give a talk around evidence-based collaborative diligence, which is now the rage that's moving out through the system. And you're up and you're giving your talk, and you're describing the thesis, and you're describing how you've invested all these companies, and they've all they've just paid you from the proceeds of all the returns that they've made, even though you didn't have a carry, on that. But you're walking in, and you look over, and there's a young entrepreneur comes marching through the audience, very determined, obviously on the move and very focused. And he just says, "Samir, I've been following your career. You don't understand. I grew up as the son of a diplomat moving all throughout the world. I ended up in Argentina. I ended up in all these different places. I spoke 5 different languages. I can't speak any of them right now. They're still resident in my back of my head. But I speak 5 different languages, and I'm there." And you're looking at them, and now I'm building my first digital healthcare company. And you look at this young version of yourself. What's the one piece of advice you'd give them?
Yeah. So the biggest thing that I would tell them is that you got to check your ego at the door. Okay. You got to check your ego at the door. Be humble, because it's going to happen, right? It truly is going to happen. You're going to be humbled. You got to check your ego at the door, because at the end of the day, you're building something and you think it is your mission. You're the founder, you're the CEO. But remember, one day if you're building right, the business is going to become bigger than you are. And at some point, you're going to have to step down, leave, pivot, take a different role. Don't ever forget that you got to check your ego. Don't ever forget your humility.
Love it. Samir, pleasure having you on. If we lasted another 3 minutes, this would have been the longest episode of the Shot of Digital Health.
I could have listened.
I
could have listened all night.
Exactly.
Yeah, he brought the story.
We're just gonna have to do it over drinks. Just gonna have to do it
over a real shot, right?
Over a real shot.
So kudos to that.
Awesome.
To all the listeners and viewers, hit subscribe, pass it on, and we'll stay consistently inconsistent and meticulously unproduced.
I appreciate
Thanks,
it.
Samir.
Thanks again.